I make sculptures and installations. The imagery that's most dominant in the work has to do with carcasses. I grew up in Argentina. It's like a very big meat-oriented culture, and these images of hanging beef had been sort of part of my childhood and experience. My father was also a surgeon, so I grew up surrounded by images of the open body, which also kind of together with the carcasses sort of like led me on this path. So I think that those two things combined, sort of like a thirst for something artistic and this like very early discovery of a world behind the skin brought me to this place. I moved to the United States in the year 2000 to study art. One of the things that happened early on is that I shrunk all my clothes in the dryers because I never used them before. Like we turned to air dryer clothing. So I had a lot of clothes that were shrunken and that I couldn't wear. So I found myself as an art student not with a lot of difficulty to do much with in terms of money. So I started using clothing. Probably the first things that I made were like abstract sculptures made out of clothing, but very early on, this image of the carcass sort of appeared. Over time, the carcasses sort of took some turns and they became very political, especially at the beginning. In this exhibition, I'm showing some of the works that I did using my own clothing, which are the carcasses that are mostly with red and white. And those were works that I saw as, on one hand, being type of like a surrogate to my own body because they were made out of my own clothing and they're connected to narratives of like feminist art and types of artworks I was interested in at the time and continue to be. But also they resonated really strongly with the history of the dictatorship that I grew up with. I think that textile pollution has also become part of the narrative as I kept working with discarded clothing. I still to this day mostly work with my own like textile pollution at home, like domestic items that are discarded of myself, my family, like linens, etc., etc. But I became very aware of how much, this fast fashion movement has had an impact on the environment as well. I'm super excited that I'm able to present these like new carcasses with these like ceiling-mounted moving track. Big sculptures rotate, simultaneously. They are alluding to, obviously, the meat packing plants, but also there is something that has to do with like, in my mind, with fashion runways and the way that like models like circulate clothing and display them, so that there's like that edge between these two worlds. Without art, without music, without movies, like without culture, is rather dull and sort of what heightens all the senses. In the end, I feel that I want to provide like an aesthetic experience, one that is fun and rewarding and exciting and things that you haven't seen before, which is sort of like what all artists want to do, to touch on somebody's emotional and aesthetic sense to create an experience that is outside of like the everyday life.